Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Multnomah County Commissioners. The health and safety of our community and staff members are at the forefront of our minds as we continue to navigate county business in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. In accordance with the declaration of emergency announced on March 11th and extended by the Board of County Commissioners on July 2nd, today's meeting is being held virtually. To align with social distancing guidelines, some rules associated with Board of County Commissioner meetings will be temporarily altered. Today, we will be suspending public testimony on non-agenda items. Written testimony on agenda items has been accepted via email. Please mute your mic when you are not speaking, and when you're presenting, make sure to unmute your mic and check to see that your camera is on. And with that, consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson moves. Commissioner Jayapal seconds. Approval of the consent calendar. The board clerk will now take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Myron.
Aye.
Commissioner Jayapal.
Aye.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Stegman.
Aye.
Chair Kafoury.
Aye. The consent calendar is approved.
R1. Proclamation declaring July 19th through July 25th, 2020 as pretrial probation and parole supervision week in Multnomah County, Oregon.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson moves. Commissioner Stegman seconds. Approval of R1. And I will give some introductory remarks. Today, we recognize July 19th through July 25th, 2020 as pretrial probation and parole supervision week in Multnomah County. This is a chance for us to recognize the critical and important work of the staff in our Department of Community Justice. Every day, they're working with individuals to find a stable path out of the criminal justice system. While I think many people believe that community corrections is purely about supervision, we know that the department is tasked with a wide variety of work. DCJ is made up of many different people: probation and parole officers, juvenile court counselors, corrections counselors and technicians, community works leaders, support personnel, volunteers and interns, and together they play an essential role in our public safety system. Our community is currently engaged in the long but necessary work of transforming our criminal justice and public safety systems to eliminate the cycles of harm, especially the disproportionate harm inflicted on Black, Latinx, and other communities of color in the name of safety and justice. And while this work forces us to ask hard questions, I know that this change is possible. And I know because for years, DCJ has been doing this work, and they've shown that transformation is possible through programs like the Community Healing Initiative and our innovative EAT curriculum. I know this work is taxing, but it is so critical, not just to the safety of our community, but to the success and stability of the people who deserve the chance to become part of our community again. I'm grateful that we have this opportunity today to thank and to recognize all that the DCJ staff do. And I'm pleased now to hand things off to Erica Pruitt, Jay Scroggin, and Dena Corso. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Kafoury and Board of County Commissioners. It's an honor to present I'm going to use the word PPPS week, as we so fondly refer to it. And we have some talking points that we want to, so we can appreciate our staff and really talk about the work that we do. So my name is Erica Pruitt, and I'm the Director of the Department of Community Justice. And thank you, Chair Kafoury and Commissioners, for allowing us to be here today to celebrate pretrial, probation, and parole supervision week. Every year, the American Probation and Parole Association and community corrections departments across the country and Canada honor thousands of probation and parole and community supervision professionals who play a vital role in public safety and work to change lives. I am proud to be a part of APPA's executive committee as the immediate past president, and I want to underscore the theme of this year's celebration: restoring trust and creating hope. Now more than ever, our community is crying out to end the disparities that have been perpetuated in the criminal justice system. We recognize that we must change and have engaged in practices and invested in programs that effectively serve Black and Indigenous people of color. We have prioritized tracking data to evaluate disparities and hold ourselves accountable. It is important to take the time to recognize the work that our staff do every day to help individuals change their lives, restore their families, and build stronger communities. The theme of restoring trust and creating hope is even more relevant this year as our staff continue to provide services to our justice-involved individuals and their families in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have worked to slow the spread of the virus by changing our practices in the best interest of our staff and community. We are here today to share a glimpse of the excellent work that our staff do. I have Dena Corso, our Division Director for Juvenile Services, and Jay Scroggin, our Adult Services Division Director. We want to take the next couple of minutes to provide you with an overview of the work we do, and I'm going to ask Dena and Jay to begin. Dena?
Can you hear me? Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners and Chair Kafori. I'm Dena Corso, the Division Director for Juvenile Services. Like Erica, I am extremely proud of how our staff have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. Unlike many county operations, the need to provide in-person direct services at JSD never stopped. Our juvenile custody services specialists, detention managers, and nutrition services staff come to work daily, just like they did pre-pandemic. They work hard every day to support the health and well-being of youth residing in our detention facility and our assessment and evaluation residential program. I'm also very proud of our juvenile court counselors who have been working hard to maintain connection with the youth and families on their caseloads. For some, this means shifting to virtual check-ins. It can also mean that when needed, they show up in person to a family home. Their connection to the youth has been an important factor in decreasing the number of youth placed in detention. I'd like to highlight the strong collaboration we have with our juvenile justice system partners who've worked alongside us to decrease the number of youth who are in detention, as well as shortening the length of stay for youth who are detained. Thanks to our effective partnership, we have been able to maintain our detention population at around 50% capacity, which is critical for mitigating the risk of spreading the virus to youth and staff in detention. While we're in the midst of responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, we continue to forge ahead with identifying how we can serve our youth and families better. For example, we are participating in a national effort to transform juvenile probation that's focused on promoting positive behavior change and diversion rather than surveillance and sanctions. I would now like to turn it over to Jay, who will talk about our Adult Services Division.
Good morning, Chair, Board of Commissioners. Hello, my name is Jay Scroggin. I am the Division Director for Adult Services. Like Dena, I'm very proud and appreciative of how our staff have responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. To highlight this, I'd like to begin with talking about our RECOG staff. Our staff at RECOG have continued to come into the Justice Center every day, despite the pandemic and the activities that have been taking place at the Justice Centers. We're just so proud of the work that they've been doing throughout all of this. Our field offices have remained closed during the pandemic. And our parole and probation staff have primarily relied on phone check-ins with our justice-involved individuals, but they have responded when needed to immediate public safety concerns. Soon we will be prioritizing in-person visits with JIIs, with justice-involved individuals exhibiting risky behaviors. Operating this way is not easy for our staff who work very hard to maintain relationships with the justice-involved individuals they see on a regular basis. Within our buildings and the work that ASD does, we have an enormous amount of critical business functions. Those are done by our records technicians, our correction counselors, correction techs, and our office assistance, and they have all found very creative ways to do this remotely. However, sometimes people do have to come into our buildings, and I want to take this time to thank every person who has had to come in on occasion to our field offices to take care of these important business functions. I'm very proud of the work that everyone has done in keeping the numbers in the jail low. One of the metrics that the ASD division uses is our weekly detainer log, and right now we average anywhere from 15 to 20 weekly detainers. This compared to if you go back pre-COVID would be 35 to 40. Just an idea, the current July count of ASD's presence within the jail is right around 75 justice involved individuals. If you look at a similar time, say in January, we were at 245. Some of our programming has had to shut down, like our community service programs. However, since March, our community works leaders have served working for the county's emergency operations center, working either there or with some of the shelter work that the county has been doing. With them and with some of our other staff, I want to thank all of them for stepping up to this huge ask. I would like to close by thanking the county communications office for highlighting some of the work that we have been doing. A recent article shared the work of what one of our correction counselors, Chu Fair, has been doing as he teaches HEAT. HEAT is a curriculum tailored to Black men and women involved in the justice system. It stands for Habilitation, Empowerment, Accountability, Therapy. As one of the last stops in the public safety system, our goal is to work with justice involved individuals to provide them with the resources they need while also working with them to change their behaviors and outlook on life. Providing a curriculum like HEAT is something we are committed to do more of. I would now like to turn it back over to Erica, who will highlight some of the work that our director's office has been doing and read the proclamation.
Like JSD and ASD, the director's office had to pivot quickly to a new way of operating. I would like to thank our human resources team for providing support and resources to many staff who had questions about how things were changing. They also coordinated the many staff that have been working in the EOC. Our business applications team provided much assistance to those employees who had never had access to technology at home. Our business services team has been in constant contact with our providers, helping them navigate the uncertain time. In addition, members of this team worked hard to adjust our department's budget to address the changes we needed to make in response to COVID-19. Our research and planning team are helping us memorialize and learn from this remarkable time by researching the impact of COVID-19 to our operations. They have interviewed staff and are developing a plan to reach out to our justice-involved individuals and survivors. They will also analyze our data on our outcomes. Our volunteer coordinator is working with staff and volunteers to reimagine how we can deliver programming and volunteer services in this new reality. Our victim services unit has been working hard to connect survivors to resources and financial assistance. As you know, calls are up, and local domestic violence service providers have been experiencing an increase in survivors accessing their services. We have 2 project managers working tirelessly to protect the health and safety of people in our facilities and working in the field. I would like to close by thanking all of the staff who work towards our vision, community safety through positive change. And now we would like to read the proclamation. Chair Kafori, do you have comments before we read the proclamation?
Why don't you read the proclamation first, and then we'll go through and do comments and questions from the board. Thanks, Erica.
Okay. Excellent. So, before the Board of County Commissioners for Multnomah County, Oregon, declaring July 19th through July 25th, 2020 as pretrial, probation, and parole supervision week in Multnomah County, Oregon. The Multnomah County Board of Commissioners finds community supervision is an essential service for Multnomah County and our public safety system. DCJ staff treats justice-involved adult and youth and their families with dignity while recognizing the right of the public to be safeguarded from criminal activity. DCJ staff supervises over 11,500 adult probationers and parolees annually, processes over 29,000 cases in our recognizant units, receives over 2,500 youth referrals, and serves approximately 800 youth and their families, which includes diversion, informal, and formal supervision. DCJ staff uses best practices when holding justice-involved individuals accountable as they deliver supervision, sanctions, and treatment resources to improve public safety and address the factors that drive crime. DCJ staff works in partnership with law enforcement and community agencies toward a shared vision of a safer community. DCJ staff respects victim rights and are dedicated to providing services and protection for survivors. DCJ staff advocates for the restoration of communities harmed by crime and delinquent behavior, and DCJ staff integrates trauma-informed practices and brain science into our work and applies an equity lens to inform our decisions. And DCJ staff have continued to provide services to our justice-involved individuals and their families in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. This includes staff who are keeping 24/7 operations open in our detention, assessment, evaluation, residential program, and recognizance unit. Other staff quickly pivoted to work remotely and came up with creative ways to provide supervision and services to justice-involved individuals and survivors. The Multnomah County Board of Commissioners proclaims July 19th through July 25th, 2020 is declared pretrial, probation, and parole supervision week in Multnomah County in honor, recognition, and respect for the dedication and contributions of the county's community justice staff. Adopted this 30th day of July, 2020.
Thank you, Erica and Jay and Dena. Now we're going to go through the commissioners for questions or comments. We'll start with Commissioner Myron.
Thank you so much, Erica, Dena, and Jay, for the presentation and for describing all of the incredible work that you do and that your team and that the staff of DCJ does. I particularly love the theme of this year's proclamation, the Restoring Trust and Creating Hope, because this is the time. It really is what it encompasses what we are all about, as particularly we face the challenges we're dealing with COVID, and also the real movement right now to address the systemic, structural, and institutional racism that has been inherent in our system since basically their inception. We are seeing challenges like we've never seen before, but also, as you've described, so many real opportunities for change. And it is inspiring of hope to see how we've been able to break down some of these seemingly intractable barriers to doing things differently. And I am particularly excited as we are re-envisioning sort of our community safety system. And it's a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of hard work lying ahead, but your team is the one to be doing this work. And I just want to express appreciation for you and for the incredible DCJ staff who has been doing that essential work toward promoting justice with a trauma-informed and restorative approach during these most challenging of times. So thank you so much. That's it.
Commissioner Jayapal.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Erica, Dena, and Jay. Thank you for the work that you do every day. Thank you to all of the staff at DCJ. Your jobs are difficult at the best of times, and this has not been the best of times. It's been the most challenging of times. So really appreciate the daily dedication, the daily commitment, the daily hard work. And as Commissioner Myron said, I think we all recognize that this challenge has also brought opportunity, and we are all excited about the really tangible prospect of change for our communities, of true restoration. I too love that theme of restoring trust and creating hope. I feel really hopeful, and I feel hopeful in part because of the team that we have at DCJ. All of you, as well as your staff, I think we are so well positioned to make the changes that we know we have to make. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Vega-Peterson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Erica, Dena, and Jay, for the presentation today and for all the work that you do. And really just a huge thank you to everyone at DCJ for all of the work they do day in and day out to serve our community, and especially, you know, in light of all of the changes that COVID has wrought. Like, people are probably doing their jobs in ways that they never imagined before, having to be committed and having to be flexible in serving justice-involved individuals and survivors. And I just appreciate the work that they're doing so much, and thank them for that. And, you know, I also think that it's wonderful that DCJ has the commitment of really attacking racial inequities and disparities and really fighting for racial justice in this time, as my colleagues have said. This is, you know, this is work that we've been trying to do for a long time, but like being fully committed to that and marching forward strongly and really digging into the work is so important. And I'm glad that we're all committed to doing that. And I have to say, I really enjoyed the article about Choose Fair in the Wednesday Wire. Caring and helping out others is what Choose stands for. And I think that is just such a great motto to have, and a really great summary of the work that people at DCJ are doing. So thank you so much.
Commissioner Segman.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with everything that my fellow commissioners have said, and did want to call out your staff. I've been doing a lot of reading, and sometimes, while I am very grateful to Dena and Jay and Erica, it's the folks that we don't get to see in our board meetings that I really want to acknowledge as well. From those record technicians to the counselors and all the folks that work behind the scenes. They are the ones that are really on the front lines of this important work, and operating in COVID. You've just had to completely redesign how you deliver the services that need to be delivered. And I want to acknowledge the racial justice that you are working towards, and how it is our goal, your goal, to keep people out of the criminal justice system through programs like CHI, like the Community Healing Initiative, and the HEAT program. And I just love what I think, Erica, you had said something about that you and your team and your staff, that you want to have community safety through positive change. And I think that truly summarizes where we need to go and how we need to get there. So thank you all so much for your dedication and your professionalism. We depend on you and we need you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Segman. And now, if the board clerk would take a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Myron?
Aye.
Commissioner Jayapal?
Aye.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Segman?
Aye.
Chair Kafoury?
Aye. The proclamation is adopted. Yay!
R2, recognition of District Attorney Rudd Underhill for his public service.
So moved.
Oh, it's not a voting item.
Oh.
Are we going to take a vote on Rod Underhill? Whether we're going to let him retire or not? I don't think so. This is a recognition of our District Attorney Rod Underhill as he is departing office. And we are going to start with the Chief Deputy District Attorney, Jeff House. Jeff, are you on the call?
I'm on the call. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning.
Great. Good morning, Chair Kafori and members of the County Commission. It truly is my honor and a privilege to be here with you today to honor and recognize the career of retiring District Attorney Rod Underhill. You know, Rod started as a Deputy District Attorney on September 6th of 1988, and his career as a Deputy DA, as a Senior Deputy DA, as a Chief Deputy DA was a remarkable success, and that's all before he was elected District Attorney in 2012. Rod was the original domestic violence Deputy District Attorney in Multnomah County. He was a unit of one back in the early 90s. It was during that time, I think, that I don't want to say developed, I think he recognized his passion to serve victims of crime and particularly victims of domestic violence. He prosecuted a case, State of Oregon versus Abdur al-Wadud, which was a incredibly complex case where the body of the unfortunate victim was never recovered, and yet he successfully prosecuted that case, setting the standard for him, for the county, for the state in terms of prosecutorial excellence in domestic violence. I started in the office in 1995, and in 1997, I had my first opportunity to work directly under Rod in the domestic violence unit. As everyone on this call knows, prosecuting domestic violence cases is an incredibly complex and difficult task. And I learned how to do that from Rod Underhill, my boss at the time. I looked through his file in order to prepare my remarks today. It's funny that the district attorney has a personnel file that I have access to, but I looked through it and I found a note from his then supervisor, Helen Smith, from back in 2000 when she was the chief deputy and Rod was still the senior deputy in the domestic violence unit. This is what she wrote. She wrote, "The only real issue I had was to remind him to let me know when things got too busy, when things got too stressful. Rod is such a hard worker that he often takes on too much." And that very much encapsulates, I think, Rod's work ethic, his ethos, his passion for this work. After leading the domestic violence unit, Rod was moved to become the team captain in Unit C, which is our unit that deals with violent crimes, robbery, burglary, vehicular homicides. And during that time, he also worked with the Portland Police Bureau's cold case homicide unit, successfully prosecuting cases that were years, even decades old, and that where oftentimes the trail had gone cold, and Rod, working with that unit, was able to successfully revive those investigations and successfully prosecute those cases, including one particularly complex case that went to trial in 2005, State of Oregon versus Michael Davis. And again, I had the opportunity to work with Rod on that case. The trial took 2 months. The case was originally from 1991. The trail had gone cold, but through his hard work and perseverance, we were able to successfully convict Michael Davis of that horrible double homicide. Rod was promoted to chief deputy by then District Attorney Mike Schrunk in 2007, and then he was elected district attorney in 2012. You know, the complete list of Rod's accomplishments as district attorney can't possibly be encapsulated in my brief remarks, but I'm going to hit a few highlights for you today. Early on in 2013, Rod was one of the authors of House Bill 3194, which resulted in the Justice Reinvestment Act, of which we're still benefiting today. Rod and Caroline Wong and myself sat around his table. I'll never forget this meeting with our pads out, and we sketched out the framework for the Multnomah County Justice Reinvestment Program. which is wildly successful, which has diverted or avoided sending hundreds, literally hundreds of people from Multnomah County to prison. And it was the partnership with our judiciary, with the defense bar, with treatment providers, and particularly because it's Parole and Probation Recognition Day, with our partners at DCJ to come up with a plan that successfully managed and diverted these folks from prison and kept them in our community and helped them become successful. Rod established the Equity, Dignity, and Opportunity Council in our office, which is a thriving group of lawyers and non-lawyers that have that get together weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, in order to address issues like the very things we're talking about here today and going on in our community and in our country: equity, opportunity, racial injustice, all of these things. And we've managed with that council to bring them to the forefront of our discussions and to make real progress internally and externally on these important issues. Rod pulled together law enforcement leaders and district attorneys from the region in order to tackle an obvious source of inequity in our system, and that was the prosecution, the enforcement and prosecution of the crime of interfering with public transportation, which, when you look at charts that describe racial and ethnic disparities in our criminal justice system, that one was off the charts. And Rod just said, we're going to take a stand against this, and he brought that group together in order to eliminate the disproportionate impact on Black, Indigenous, and people of color with regard to that particular charge. And that was just one of many efforts that he's made personally and professionally to combat the scourge of racial and ethnic disparities in our system. He rescinded our office's longstanding disinclination to grant second look for juvenile offenders charged with Measure 11 crimes, and that was a big lift, and Rod got it done, and it's been also tremendously successful. He was way out in front of the movement to lower sanctions for criminal drug possession and treat it like the public health issue that it is. And through his own hard work and collaboration, started the Treatment First program here in Multnomah County. He also was instrumental in bringing the LEAD program about in Multnomah County. He's worked tirelessly on behalf of victims of crime, and one instance of that is his work with the Department of Corrections and the Oregon Legislature to help victims gain access to funds that are held by the Department of Corrections to help pay restitution. Here's an example of sort of his leadership. When the Oregon Legislature is launching a new criminal justice program, and they need a pilot county or a couple of pilot counties to help get those programs off the ground, Multnomah County is always one of those pilot counties. And that's because they know they can rely on this office and Rod's leadership to carry through that message and those ideas and sort of model them for the rest of the state. That happened with the Multnomah County Justice Reinvestment Program. That happened with grand jury recordation, and it's currently happening with the new hate crimes bills. Rod's long been a board member of the Abel Gordley Center for Healing, and I know he treats that work with great passion. I could go on and on, but I'll just say this: while doing all of those things during his time in office, we've also processed approximately 150,000 cases. So the work goes on, and everything that he's accomplished while managing an extremely busy and extremely productive office. I'm going to end by sort of highlighting, everybody on this call, I think, knows that Rod's a talker. And when you're in a meeting with him or when you're in a personal conversation with him, he's got a lot to say. And I've sort of highlighted from my personal experience 3 quotes, and I'm going to put them in context for you, but they actually mean a lot to me. Rod, he's always a model of professionalism. No matter what's coming at him, he's always prepared, he's always ready, and he's always enthusiastic about the topic. He will never let his ego or his personality or his personal feelings get in the way of his professionalism. So here's quote 1. Always count to 10 before you hit send on an email. I can't tell you how valuable that advice is, and I will take that with me for the rest of my career. Here's another. No matter how busy District Attorney Rod Underhill is, if an employee, if a partner from another agency, or if a person on the street says to him, do you have a second? I have something to speak with you about. His answer is always, for you, of course. For you, of course. And he means that. He means that I'm giving you my time. I may be as busy as I can be, but for you, let's talk. Let's have a conversation. He'll put his pen down. He'll look you in the eye, and he gives you that time. And that is incredibly valuable. And finally, I'll say this. Rod, he's a trial lawyer. He's a public servant. He's a cyclist. He's a baseball fan. He's a music fan. But first and foremost, he's a family man. His wife, Dena, his children, Holly, Ethan, and Rachel, they mean the world to him. But that sense of being a family man carries through to how he conducts his business, how he conducts his relationships with us, his employees. Whenever an employee needed compassion, respite, time away from the office, time to heal, time to think, time to decompress from the stressful work we do, the words that came out of his mouth every single time were, well, it's family first. And he meant that. And I cannot thank him enough for that sense of comfort that he gives his employees. So Chair Kafoury and members of the commission, on behalf of myself, on behalf of members of the District Attorney's Office, current and former, on behalf of victims of crime, I want to say thank you, District Attorney Rod Underhill, for your leadership for the past 32 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Those were really nice comments. I think next we're going to have Erica Pruitt.
Hello, good morning. My name is Erica Pruitt, and I am the Director of the Department of Community Justice. And good morning, Chair Kafoury and Board of County Commissioners. I'm honored to I wrote a kind of a message to you, Rod, and so I'm just going to give you some comments on a really excellent career. Rod, I have been proud to work in a criminal justice system with you in it. You have been a valuable and trusted partner. I have admired how you balance justice, holding both the humanity of the victim and the defendant at the same time. You have been a tireless advocate for the criminal justice system to do the right things for the right reasons. I remember your active presence at the table as the Gang Impacted Family Team gift program was forming. I was a senior manager at the time, and I was so impressed that our district attorney was taking an active role in developing the program. You recognized, even before our community's outcry for change, that Multnomah County needed to face the disparities in our criminal justice system. You were a valiant partner as Multnomah County developed the Justice Reinvestment Program and Treatment First. Even before Senate Bill 1008, you recognized that we needed to engage in justice reinvestment for juveniles, giving youth consideration to have their cases handled in juvenile court. Rod, you are an innovator, a justice warrior, and a man with a caring and generous heart. It has been an honor to learn from you and work alongside you. You are leaving a much improved Multnomah County criminal justice system because of your influence within it. We are all public servants, and you have honorably and excellently served our public. You have exhibited integrity in maintaining the public's trust. Muhammad Ali said, "Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth." Rod, you have paid your rent in full. I'll be praying for you to have abundance and health as you begin this new journey. You have earned it. Well done.
Thanks, Erica. And next we have our sheriff, Mike Reese.
Chair Kafori, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Mike Reese, the Sheriff of Multnomah County. And Rod, I just want to say from my heart, thank you so much for your service to all of us who live, work, and visit Multnomah County. You've had an exceptional career as outlined by Jeff. You and I started our careers around the same time. You a little bit before me. We fondly refer to you and your colleagues, the new DAs, as the baby DAs, way back in the dark ages. And I'm sure you had fond names for all of us at the sheriff's office as we started our careers as well. You've done some exceptional things for our criminal justice system, representing the most vulnerable victims in our community. But on the other side of that, I was there at the inception of the work around justice reinvestment. And I really believe that you and Lane Lane represented the defense bar, and you as our DA were the linchpins for success. And the fact that you were willing to collaborate and look at each other's work in a new way and allow for alternatives to sentencing, traditional sentencing, and give people a second chance literally means that hundreds of people are accessing services that have really given them and their families an opportunity for a different life. And instead of prison, they're here in our community living and working among us. And without your progressive practices as a district attorney, that just simply would not have happened. Now, a couple years ago, you have this other side of you. You're an avid cyclist. And a couple years ago, we did a triathlon together and you smoked the bike course. So in closing, I hope that you are able to literally ride off into the sunset on your bicycle and enjoy whatever transitions you have planned, whatever you do next in life, that it includes that love of cycling and a new bicycle and the opportunity to just get out there and ride and enjoy life. So thank you so much for your service. God bless you.
Thank you, Sheriff. And now we have time for commissioners to add their farewell, thanks, gratitude. We will start this time with Commissioner Simpson.
Thank you, Chair. It's been such an honor to serve with Rod. Rod, I remember serving and continue to serve on the Jail Bed Reduction Subcommittee, and have been so grateful for the collaboration that you bring to the table and the important work that is happening at those tables. I also wanted to acknowledge the tremendous effort and role that you played in addressing our rape kit backlog, and how essentially all of that backlog has been completed. And that was a huge effort by you and your department. And so I want to express appreciation for that. And also along defelonizing drug possession charges, that's huge. And diverting people out of the criminal justice system through Treatment First and LEAD, those are all just incredibly important programs that others have said that allow community members to thrive within our community and not in the criminal justice system. I just want to thank you so much. I mean, you've been such a groundbreaker in so many ways, and I was surprised to hear that you were leaving early, And I appreciate you welcoming the new district attorney. And I'm going to miss working beside you. And I promise to continue my commitment to be more involved and learn more about all of the important units and departments within the district attorney's office. And you've just been a tremendous person to work alongside. And I wish you and your family all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stegman. Commissioner Vega-Peterson?
Thank you, Chair. District Attorney Underhill, this has been it's been so great to work with you. I think, towards the end of your career as Multnomah County Commissioner. But I have to say, I first got to know you when I was in the legislature as a state representative. And I can't tell you how much I respect the role that you played going down to Salem, showing up for important conversations, managing, I think, and really with great finesse, the dynamics of all the different district attorneys across the state as we were trying to get policy done and really push for more true justice in our system. And I appreciate the leadership role that you've played in those discussions and the changes that you've been able to enact at the state level, but also right here in Multnomah County. I think the words that the sheriff and Jeff and Erica have shared today have been an incredible statement to who you are as a person, who you've been as a leader, how you've been as a prosecutor. And so, I can't add much to all of that, but I just want to say thank you so much for your decades of public service and your decades of service to justice for Multnomah County. It's something that has left a mark on our county that will be remembered for a long time. And as you move into this next stage of your life, I wish you joy and I wish you lots of adventures in whatever shape you choose to take them. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jayapal?
Thank you, Chair. Well, Rod, I haven't had as much time to work with you as my colleagues have had, but I want to say that in the time I have had, I have seen all of the qualities that those amazing tributes have called out. Hearing, especially from Jeff, the sort of list of your accomplishments is truly, truly remarkable. Those have been big things, justice reinvestment. I particularly have appreciated hearing about and talking to you about your dedication to domestic violence and to serving victims of domestic violence. As you know, that's one of my passions as well. So thank you so much for your decades of service in that area. I'm reminded of a seemingly small thing, but one that had personal impact on me that I've thanked you for privately and just want to call out publicly as well. And it's this: when I first came to meet with you after being elected, I walked into your office and there was that wall of photographs of DAs past. And it was a wall of predominant, I think, all white men. I'm not sure that there was any exception to that wall. The message that sends to somebody like me is that we don't belong. The next time that I came to your office, that wall was gone. And again, it seems like a small thing, but it's one that really had an impact to me to know that whether someone called it out to you, whether you noticed it yourself, it was something that you understood and that you changed immediately. So I want to thank you for that. And, I want to echo something else that Jeff said about you're always making time, especially as a new commissioner. I had lots of questions, and I greatly appreciated the fact that you were always willing to make that time to answer those questions. I wish you all the best. I know that you're going to continue to serve the community as you have done. And I hope that as you do that, you also find that joy that Commissioner Vega-Peterson mentioned and that you're out on your bike, as the sheriff mentioned. And I look forward to seeing you again and working with you again in that capacity. So thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Myron?
Thank you. I just want to add my gratitude to that has been expressed so beautifully by my colleagues and by Erica and by Sheriff Reese and by Jeff. When I first met you, I was running for this office, and at that time, just, I was basically cold calling you. And, it just, hey, I'm running for Multnomah County Commissioner. And you were just so kind and welcoming and thoughtful and just passionate, and really took so much time to talk to me about your office, about the work that you do in collaboration with so many others, the work of the county commission, how it all ties together. And it was just so inspiring being there and talking to you as someone who was interested in becoming a public servant, to see someone who had clearly embodied what a public servant truly is. Jeff had described a number of really wonderful qualities that you have, and really I saw all of this on display even at that first meeting, and then ever since. I've really appreciated just your vision with the Multnomah County Justice Reinvestment Program, and that avoiding sending so many Multnomah County residents to jail, and doing better by them. And that is something now we sort of talk about, oh, of course, McGirt, but was such a revolutionary sort of approach. And just appreciate your work in that, your collaboration, like I said, that vision. Considering the public health approach in terms of drug possession, recognizing that, pretty early on in the big scheme of things, that addiction, substance use disorder are actually health conditions, and proceeding with that mindset. As Commissioner Jayapal and others have mentioned, the attention to domestic violence and juvenile offenders, and just so much. I've really appreciated. I take a behavioral health sort of approach to thinking about a lot of the work that we do at the county, and talking to you, you really understand those behavioral health elements, those underpinnings, and the intersection with our criminal justice system. And that has just been really, I think fairly unique, perhaps, in talking to a lot of DAs. So I appreciate it. And it isn't just the work that you've done that sort of speaks for itself, but it really is how you do it, and that integrity that you bring to the process. So I feel really privileged to have been able to work with you over the past almost 4 years now, and I wish you just all the best and so much joy in this next chapter. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Myron. Rod, I know this has been painful for you to have to sit here and listen to all of these people wax eloquently about you and how much we've enjoyed working with you, the great things you've done, and how much we're going to miss you. But now I have to talk. Luckily, however, Jeff, in doing a really good impersonation of Rod, spoke so long and touched on all of the points that I was going to make. My comments will be rather short in comparison. I really just want to echo many of the things that people have already said here. When I think about how much the world has changed in just the past 6 months, it's even more remarkable to think about how much has changed over the last 3 decades. And Jeff and the other commissioners have touched on many of the changes that you've made and that you've led in your career, like the creation of the county's first treatment courts, justice reinvestment, decriminalizing marijuana charges, creating our Treatment First program, ending the sexual assault Kit Backlog, and so much more. Some of these things right now we kind of take for granted, but it was a huge effort on your part to continue to work to push these changes. And I hope you feel proud of what you've been able to accomplish. District attorneys play such a critical role in the public safety system. And while I think that role kind of flew under the radar for a while, you have helped raise the profile. And I want to thank you for your willingness to make changes to the public safety system, changes that the public's demanded, but that almost any other DA in the state or around the country would not have been willing to make. And I think it shows your ability to listen to what the community is saying and then take action. So after all of these decades of public service, I'm very sure that you're looking forward to a little time off. I hesitate to say retirement because I know, as others have mentioned, that sitting on your rocking chair, playing golf, whatever, is not really your style. So I'm sure we will see you back in action very soon. But I really do hope that you're able to take some time off, not only on your bike but in your RV as you're driving around and visiting different sites. So thank you again for your work. I've enjoyed working with you in a professional way, and I've also enjoyed getting to know you personally over the past years. Enjoyed our conversations, and now it's your turn to talk to us. Thanks, Rod.
Quite well. Thank you, Chair Kafoury. Thank you, commissioners. I read as I was preparing some remarks for this opportunity, I read that I had 20 minutes, and I took that to read that I had 20 minutes all to myself, not 20 minutes for the event. So I have fashioned my remarks to meet that 20-minute time limit. All right, I'm joking. I know you all know that. At least some of you know that. I'm joking. It'll only be a few minutes. Jeff is right. I'm long-winded. I see I have passed on a bit of a trait from me to him in that area. So it was another teachable moment. And so I take that as a job well done. For sure, Chair Kafoury, when your remarks are, this has kind of been painful. Yeah, that's one of the words that I would use. I'm comfortable for sure. But I would also say, frankly, humbled and honored. So thank you all for these very kind remarks. I'm going to state some of the obvious, and it is as we all recognize, we are in the midst of what I hope and believe will be a monumental and lasting societal and racial justice challenge and change for all of us in our communities and in our country. As human beings and as public servants, we must continue to all emphatically reject racism and bigotry and hatred in all of its forms. And that will continue whether I'm riding my bicycle or talking with my 3 children, and I'll touch on that. But all of us have that duty, obligation, and it must be a sense of urgency of now and lasting forever. Now, during my tenure as district attorney, I've joined all of you, Chair Kafoury, Commissioner, Sheriff Reese, Director Pruitt, and Jeff Howes. But just another comment regarding Jeff Howes, I could not have selected a better person to help me make the right decisions for all the right reasons. So thank you, Jeff, and for your kind remarks. But we've all joined together in making very intentional changes to our public system to reduce towards elimination of disparities and the impacts, the negative impacts and collateral consequences to the communities of color. But for sure, it's also a simultaneous recognition that while we all work together to make those changes, there is so much more work to be done. We have not nearly finished making those changes. So I look forward to watching and helping to the extent I am able to or can or get asked to as you all take on the continued very important mantle for making appropriate changes to our criminal justice system and beyond. Those changes are a sense of urgency of now. They must be accomplished right now, but they also need to be simultaneously looked at with long-term strategy and vision to ensure not just momentary success, but also meaningful and lasting, enduring change. You know, as I reflect on, well, it's now over 3 decades worth of work. I for sure am humbled, as I mentioned, about the work that we've done and some of the thoughts regarding my role in all of that. But I have to say that from my perspective is, you know, where I have seen what I personally see as the most valuable for me is working with the people I've had the chance to over 3 decades plus within the district attorney's office, and the tremendous people who commit not just their professional lives, but so much more, their personal lives, in order to serve the public. And, you know, I've had the fortune of working with, you know, an office of about 200 people for most all of my career. I've had the opportunity to not just meet and get to know people, but also their families, watch them grow, to watch people reach new professional and personal heights. You know, that's been for me the greatest part of the last few decades. For sure, my wife Dena has played a tremendous role in all of that. Without hesitation, she has supported the work and commitment that the job that I should say jobs, because although it's been one job with the district attorney's office, many jobs within that. And she's always been there without hesitation, supporting whatever needed to occur to get those jobs done. And our 3 children, Holly and Ethan and Rachel, well, some of you may know Rachel. She gets reminded every once in a while that she was born during a about 3-month trial that I had here on the 6th floor of the Multnomah County Courthouse. A very, very serious and tragic case involving the death of a young woman and many, many other tragedies surrounding that. So she gets reminded of that fact, and we talk a little bit, some levity about the stories surrounding that certain Friday where the court took the day off and she was born. But those 3 children have all grown up in our community, and now they are giving back to the community in their own unique and special ways. Now, one thing I do also know for sure, and that is the future in our community regarding the role of the district attorney's office is bright. District Attorney-elect Mike Schmidt both deserves, but is also needs all of your help and support. And I just have zero doubt that all of you are committed to give him the help and support that he deserves and will need, and also the members of this office as we continue to make adjustments and changes that all of us know are necessary. So he also is fortunate to be elected to lead an office full of deeply talented and dedicated attorneys, advocates, investigators, and critically important support staff who each and every minute of each and every day do as we all do, and that is create and foster a culture of fairness and professionalism and share a common commitment toward justice and equity for all. So it's with those remarks, I'm disappointed in myself. I didn't reach quite the 20 minutes that I promised, but I'll cut it short in the interest for everyone. Once again, thank you, and it has truly been my honor to serve this community.
Thank you, Rod. So when COVID is over, we'll have to have a real party for you. But from now, this is what it's gonna, as good as it's gonna get, a virtual party. Thanks, thank you.
I'll accept. As long as it involves a post 5 o'clock, I can ride my bike to the local pub that you're thinking of.
I'm there. All right,
Thanks,
Maria. Thank you.
R3, informational board briefing on COVID-19 countywide operations update.
Holly and Garcia, are you ready? All right. Go ahead.
All right. Good morning, commissioners and Chair Kafori. My name is Holly Calhoun, and I am your interim Chief Human Resources Officer, and I'm here with the fabulous Kim Garcia, management analyst from DCA, and we're going to kind of walk through where we're at today as an organization. We'll be providing information on how we are navigating this new world and learning daily from CDC, OSHA, Department of Labor, and our own public health officials on how to create safe work environments that allow us to provide vital services in our community. If you don't mind flipping to the next slide. So high level, we'll talk through current state, where are we at, what have we learned, what principles and priorities are guiding decisions. Kim will share some countywide implementation standards we've put in place to really ensure compliance and safety in all of our very unique and diverse work settings and environments. And we'll share a bit around how we used employee guidance to drive some of our policy changes and the ongoing work we still have to do to support workforce. And then a little bit around next steps. Next slide, please. So I think it's important to remember some of the language that we've been using has been a bit misleading. Words like ramp down, ramp up, reopen, I don't think are painting the full picture. Quite honestly, words like reimagine and rethink, I think are more accurately reflective of the creative work that's happened in our departments to find ways to serve our community while keeping our employees safe and slowing the spread. And so I just wanted to call that out that most of our services have remained open. We've provided virtual ways to continue to connect with our community and provide those vital services. And while some of our buildings did close to both the public and employees, a lot of our buildings remained open. I know we had DCJ speaking earlier today. What that meant is that in real time, we've had to identify ways to create safety in those work environments. Moving forward, and this is a day-by-day engagement with our department leaders, decisions around reopening buildings or changing of any services will be based on the critical nature of that service, the vital need to serve it in person, and other statutory requirements. So really, we aren't just arbitrarily opening things. We are driving that based on the true need to our community, but doing so in a way that we can also ensure safety to our workplace. We have been having ongoing department strategy sessions with department leaders, with myself, Peggy, Kim, and Tracy from DCA to really look at all of our services and how do we create guiding county principles to create baseline standard and then really build up from there to acknowledge the uniqueness of each of our programs and services. And I think it's also important to just recognize that while we are clearly in the thick of a pandemic, we're stabilizing. And I think today's presentation hopefully will share a bit of what I mean by that as it relates to physical distancing standards, face coverings, health attestations, et cetera. Next slide, please. So we have had to really approach this as an entire organization with some shared priorities. We know, as I mentioned on the previous slide, we aren't going to just arbitrarily open services or buildings. We want to do that safely and thoughtfully. And that's nuanced and that's ever changing. And that requires a lot of collaboration with our leaders across the organization with input from both the community and our workforce. Obviously, until there's a vaccine, physical distancing protocols, face coverings, robust hygiene, et cetera, have to be the most critical way in which we approach our work. And we'll speak to that in a bit here. And that we have to hear the voices of our community and our employees on how do we approach this work differently. We will share some of how we've approached that, but I think that we have a lot more we need to do. This is an evolving time. Every day brings a new obstacle, and we have to figure out ways to both keep our employees informed, but also learn from them and think differently based on what we're hearing. And obviously the theme of this is that we're evolving. What we know today might look different tomorrow, and we have to be fluid and adaptable in this new normal that we're facing. Next slide, please. So obviously, We are an incredible organization. We have extremely diverse services and programs. The communities we serve have different needs. And that means that we've had to really customize. Again, we have created baseline standards around physical distancing guidelines, and all of that has to be customized based on the service and the facility. So that is a challenge and it's an obstacle. It's a way that we need to absolutely be mindful of how we're leveraging our resources in a thoughtful way. We also know that safety and physical distancing guidelines continue to evolve. So staying up to date on what we're hearing from reputable sources and using that to swiftly make change in our organization is critical and has to be a process that we are exercising every single day. And lastly, as we all know, we are not out of the game right now. So balancing that inevitable tension between the safety of our employees and serving our community has to be paramount in all of our decisions that we make. So with that, I would like to introduce Kim Garcia, Management Analyst for DCA, to speak a bit to our physical distancing strategy as it relates to our organization and services.
Morning, Kim.
Hi. Thank you, Holly. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. As Holly said, my name is Kim Garcia. I'm the Management Analyst in the Department of County Assets, and I use she, her pronouns. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to walk through some of our planning to support the county's ongoing services this morning. So let me, next slide, please. So I'm going to provide a quick overview of our countywide physical distancing standards, how we developed them, and then a few examples of how they're being applied. Our goal was to create countywide implementation standards for physical distancing that meet all compliance standards, support efficiency, and align with best industry practices. They also can be applied across departments that provide varying services and have very different space needs. Working closely with risk management and HR, we developed draft minimum physical distancing standards based on CDC and Oregon Health Authority guidelines, as well as industry best practices that can be applied to unique physical spaces. We recognized that we needed minimum standards that could be applied in health clinics, law enforcement settings, maintenance shops, and a wide variety of other types of spaces. The minimum standards were reviewed by department planning groups and property managers to ensure that they both met state physical distancing requirements and had guidelines that could be customized to all of our very different spaces. Examples of the physical distancing guidelines are shared space occupancy determined by number of people per square foot, guidance around number of people in restrooms, cubicles, elevator use, just to name a few. In addition to the spacing requirements, we also made recommendations for staggering schedules, number of people in vehicles, and cleaning guidelines for shared spaces and equipment. Next slide, please. So because every public and employee-only county space is unique, department planning teams are working with their facilities property manager to apply the physical distancing standards to their specific spaces. Many of the spaces have required custom and creative solutions. Some examples of these solutions can be seen at the libraries that have been adapted for curbside material pickup, plexiglass and barriers at public service counters, staggered staff schedules, frequent cleaning of high touch point areas, and implementing ways for customers to schedule appointments online instead of walking in. As departments develop plans for their spaces, property managers and other facilities teams have been working to capture resource needs and their availability, such as plexiglass and other physical barriers, cubicle materials, and hand sanitizer. Once plans are vetted and approved, the property managers are updating a building service change schedule based on the urgency of services to be provided in person and resource needs. This space planning is happening even though it isn't known at this time when some services will resume or when employees will be back on site. Next slide, please. So the physical distancing guidelines also identify where signage is necessary to communicate the county's requirements in different spaces. We formed a signage work group with employees from risk management, HR, facilities, behavioral health, DCA leadership, and the DCS sign shop, and came up with several sign designs. The Office of Diversity and Equity hosted an ADA work group to review the COVID signage from an accessibility perspective. Their recommendations and feedback have been incorporated, and we are working to finalize designs and install the sign. Let's see. I will pass it back over to Holly, who will walk you through the ways that employee feedback was incorporated into this process.
All right, next slide, please. Okay, so Kim has obviously provided some great information around how we are approaching physical distancing from a building perspective. But the heart of the organization is our employees, and they're scared. And that has been probably one of the most challenging ways in which we've tried to approach this is with listening to concerns and trying to hear how do we address them, but knowing that inevitably we are in uncertain times and that fear isn't going to go away by putting signs up. So I think I just want to call that out as something as we have a long-term opportunity to engage our workforce, hear from them, and shift the way that we think, and it's not going to be easy. We have solicited feedback a variety of ways so far in this COVID time. Our departments have really leaned in unique ways, conducting focus groups and having other kind of customized strategies to engage with their workforce. We have engaged in virtual town halls where we've had an upward of 1,000 attendees listening in. It's a great accessible way for folks to hear from leaders, to be able to listen when it's best convenient for them, and to provide consistent information across the workforce. We've solicited surveys. We have had our employee resource groups disseminate questionnaires within their membership. We have a regular messaging strategy called Multnomah Matters. Hopefully you've known of it, that you've read it. It allows us to give just-in-time information and digestible resources to our employees on a very regular basis. And then we've approached it with a variety of different listening sessions. In general, what we've done is we've partnered with Evaluation and Research and Office of Diversity and Equity to summarize the trends of that diverse feedback we're getting from different sources. And no surprise, number one is fear of exposure. Folks want to know, one, if I'm coming back into a work setting, there's a viable reason for it, and you're going to create a space that is safe for me to come back into. Folks want to know about continued teleworking. How do we broaden that strategy that really lifts up work-life balance? And right now our strategies, our policy is a little rigid, so we've got some work to do on that. We heard a lot of feedback around how are we supporting some of our most vulnerable employees, those with health conditions, disabilities, the parents and caregivers that are really in a new world right now. And lastly, there has been a lot of interest around how are we approaching personal protective equipment, what does workplace protection look like, and what does safety look like? And so if you don't mind going to the next slide, I'll speak a bit to what we've done with that feedback, what we've heard so far. So our efforts are continuing to evolve, but I think it is important to share that the changes that we've made thus far to policies and just general employee support have been lifted from the feedback we've gathered from our workforce. We really wanted to understand, and I referenced some of it on the previous slide, but who in our workforce is most vulnerable and most at risk, and how do we shift our approach to lift up those needs first? Examples of that, just to kind of share some with you, is that we knew that employees with less tenure and less PTO, and that often are making less money, were potentially at a greater risk to be financially harmed if they or a family member were impacted by COVID-19. We also know that every year we bring in a more diverse representation of our workforce, and so that less tenured group is also our most diverse group. So we built policies around how do we ensure that folks can safely take the time off they need and not be financially impacted. As a working parent, I obviously know that we are facing uncharted barriers and challenges right now. And we've, as an organization, tried to lean into that. We have looked at expanding that telework policy. We are continuing to look at, we've created a work group on how to make that a real win-win policy and some more support mechanism for our employees. We've created educational formats for working parents to know about leave rights like the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, which is really to support working parents with school-aged children. And we created a discounted childcare program for essential workers. Another couple examples of kind of employees at risk are those that are caregivers, those that have health conditions, or those that live with family members that are at higher risk. And so we really wanted to look at, again, expanding our leave options to create safe ways for them to take protected time off, as well as partnering with our unions to address challenging topics like essential work status, hardship, and personal protective equipment, reassignment, et cetera. And lastly, we know that employees with disabilities have voiced concern in the past around the telework policy. How do we expand that to support them? So part of that telework work group is actually using information from our IDEA ERG to inform what changes might be needed in the future. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to look at this at high level. I think this is a great example of what seems like a simple piece of guidance is unbelievably complex and nuanced in our organization. And so we have created various grids and communications around the use of masks and face coverings in our various work settings. These snapshots and resources provide guidance both for employees and clients in those work settings. It describes the rationale. So how did we land on that guidance, which obviously has been informed by governor's orders, CDC guidance, OSHA, et cetera. We carved out the uniqueness of different settings like healthcare, jail settings, shelters, detention centers, the emergency operations center, et cetera. We've provided guidance around indoor and outdoor use of face coverings and masks, what to do when you are interacting with clients outside of our facilities, and what to do when 6 feet of distance may not be able to be maintained. Next slide, please. And similar to the last slide, we also had to look at the use of health screens based on the risk of exposure and how to best use those in our unique work settings. So again, similar to the last slide, our health screening processes look different based on work setting. And they range from everything from temperature checks kind of pre-shift to signing daily health attestation logs to having to verbally attest to not having individual or specific symptoms related to COVID. And again, all of that guidance has been informed by CDC, OSHA, and in close partnership with our public health professionals. Next slide. So what have we learned? I said this at the beginning, but our plans must be fluid. What we know today very likely will change tomorrow. I think just in this last week, we've seen changes to quarantine periods, return to work guidance, COVID-19 symptoms, minimum age for face coverings. We are having to be agile, and as that information changes, quickly respond to what does it mean for our workforce and how are we informing our workforce of those changes. We also know that balancing the needs of our employees and our community has to be a critical balance in all decisions that we make, and that regular transparent communication is absolutely fundamental for our staff. I shared on a previous slide how we've solicited some of that feedback, but we still have a lot of employees that don't feel heard or recognized, and we've got to continue to prioritize how do we lean in, listen to that, and essentially learn back, look back to learn forward. Next slide. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Kim.
Thanks, Holly. So in terms of our safe space planning, our next steps are to continue to watch external factors that impact our planning and make sure our process is agile enough to evolve as needed. Departments are continuing to meet with property managers to add to their plans based on evolving guidance and needs. As those plans are finalized, we are scheduling safety measure installations based on county priorities and resource availability. Prioritizing the work, resources, and staff capacity will allow us to have safety measures in place when we're ready to change the services in the physical spaces. I also wanted to send a big thank you to everyone who's been involved in all of this very collaborative and evolving work. So, and thank you for the opportunity to walk you through our planning process. Thanks. And I think the next slide is just if there are questions.
Thank you, Holly and Kim, for the presentation this morning, and appreciate all the work that's gone into putting together these slides, or behind putting together these slides, which has been a lot. And as you both said, we need to remain agile and knowing that change will come, and I think both of you have done a really wonderful job with that, so thanks. Now we're going to walk through questions and comments from commissioners, and this time we'll start with Commissioner Myron.
Thank you. Thank you, Holly and Kim, for the presentation, and clearly all the thought and work that has gone into, thinking through all these really complicated considerations as we're trying to ensure our employees are safe and our community is safe and our clients. I had a couple of questions, and they're relatively specific, but one is about the requirements for face coverings, and particularly in the jails. I've heard concerns from a number of employees about that there are some, I believe it's the deputies, I don't know all the specifics, but in fact, most deputies aren't wearing face coverings. And I'd asked about this. I know Travis had was great and got back to me really quickly with a response from OSHA to a couple of employee complaints. But it sounds like that there's a lot that's going on, and how we are checking in with our employees about that and ensuring things, the expectation that people will wear masks, and how we as a county are holding them responsible. I feel like people might feel some fear in terms of reporting even to the county about their concerns, and so how we are addressing that.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on an extremely challenging obstacle we're facing as an organization. I think that the governor providing statewide guidance has helped us really think of ways to enforce this. And yet that balance between enforcement and education is not easy, and it is nuanced. And you add to that layers around employees that have medical conditions or other accommodations that are ensuring that we have to look at every case individual. So I think that we right now are trying to take a couple approaches, one being education, education, education. How do we continue to reinforce the why, the connection to what is happening statewide, and quite honestly, the public health values to those driving factors. At the same time, we are partnering with our unions on what does this look like when someone refuses to wear a face covering or mask that we're requiring? What does progressive discipline look like? How do we do that in partnership? So we are in those discussions now, but absolutely aware of those concerns. And I think OSHA and our partnership with risk management has also helped elevate where it's happening so that we can really customize follow-up based on those more acute needs. But I hear you, it's tough right now.
Thank you.
And I just want to add that we have made it very clear that we are following the rules, and our employees are expected to follow the rules, whether they work in an office setting or whether they work in the jail setting. And so there is no ambiguity in the message that they're getting from their leadership. And I've made it very clear to the sheriff that I expect that he is going to demand that his employees follow the rules. So and he has actually agrees and is doing everything he can as well. So I know that I have no doubt that throughout this pandemic, there will be times when individuals are trying to not follow the rules, and it will be incumbent upon us to ensure that they are reminded that they are expected as employees of Multnomah County to follow the rules of our state.
And if I can jump in, hi, this is Peggy Bray, your interim chief operating officer. Go by she, her, hers. I also just want to point out that Holly is super duper diligent in making sure that anything new coming from the governor, CDC, on face covering, she's just updating that constantly and making sure it's being pushed out to leadership, to employees. So she really is all on what is the most relevant stuff, what to do about it. So just she's relentless actually in making sure that we have the most current information out there. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks.
Thank you, Peggy. And yes, Holly, you are doing an amazing job, and I deeply appreciate that. And also really appreciate the chair's comments about this, because I think ultimately, as we are seeing, especially with face coverings, it boiling down to largely it has become politicized, and to be sure that we as a county are holding our own employees accountable for doing the right public health thing. So we're protecting everyone. So that's great. You have both answered that question awesomely. And the one other thing was a question of the communication with employees. And it sounds like there has been so much great opportunity to receive feedback, and just a question about how that closed loop communication is happening, how we are getting back the word to our employees when they raise the concerns. So we're not only addressing them or at least acknowledging those concerns and that we're working on them, but how they as a whole, and I know there's the message and those things, but how collectively we are really compiling that in a meaningful way to get back to our employees so they know that they're heard and they know what we're doing.
Yeah, I think as I kind of referenced, this is probably one of the biggest challenges that I personally see from an HR perspective that we need to continue to tackle. There's sort of the meta trends that we have found ways, to your point, Commissioner, around using messages and town halls to reinforce. We have, as leaders, joined different employee resource groups and department listening sessions, but those individual needs that actually matter a lot to an individual and their personal circumstance have been harder to follow up with as quickly as we need to. And I think it's a big gap. And I think we also need to continue to learn on ways to work with our ERGs, our equity committees across the organization in partnership with leadership to more transparently tell the story of what we've heard and what we've done. And I think that's just we've got work to do there.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you.
Sure, Jayapal.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Holly and Kim, for the presentation and for the work. This is so complicated, and really appreciate how thoughtful and sort of thorough your approach has been. I guess one comment and a couple of questions. The comment is one that I made during our proclamation about disabilities, the recognition of the Disabilities Act last week, which is, for so long, we've assumed this model of 9 to 5 at your desk. This is how we do our work. And then we think about accommodations as ways in which we tweak that basic framework. And really, it needs to be, I think what we're learning is we need to approach it the other way, that the baseline assumption is if a member of our staff or an employee says, this is the way that I can best do my work, that we assume it can be done that way. And then we tweak and accommodate that model in order to make it work, using work a lot of times in that sentence, but you know what I mean? So, I think that's a real opportunity, and it's a way that we can lead. And I think that, I know that part of the challenge is that culture shift at a manager level. It's scary to change the way you've been doing things for so long. but to work with our managers to say, here's the paradigm shift. Here's how we're going to rethink the way that we do work in every way, schedules, telework, all of that. So that's my comment. A question about childcare. It's great that we're providing discounted childcare for our essential workers, and everybody else, whether teleworking or not, is dealing. You're dealing. I think you mentioned with having kids at home. So I'm wondering what else? What else can we do? How else can we lead in terms of being an employer that's flexing to accommodate childcare needs of our employees?
The question of the day, Commissioner. Yes, I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. Just notified Park Rose School District is all virtual, and that's all crazy to me. So this is what we have to do. This is the reality we're in. We are having those discussions right now. We are looking at some of the discounted childcare programs that we already offered. How do we potentially look at expanding those? How do we use our EAP to look at providers and other resources that we can actually just spread across the organization? How do we engage with our FAM employee resource group to understand who's most impacted by that? We had a really great discussion this week around, quite honestly, there are parts of working parents that are most harmed by that. You've got single parents in multi-generational homes that it is not as easy, multiple kids on different schedules, hourly shifts, that makes it feel almost impossible. And how do we, again, approach that most acute need first? I think some of what you said is a start. We have this chaos has brought this opportunity to think different around these traditional and arbitrary schedules and how work is done, when it is done, what flexibility looks like, how is that two-way versus management driven. I think we're at that think tank stage now, and there's some pretty cool ideas. And I agree with you of, is this our chance to be at the forefront of that versus in a reaction mode? And I think there's some opportunities for that.
That's great. Oh, am I unmuted? Yes, that's great. And I really look forward, I hope we'll have a chance in a subsequent briefing to hear what that's looking like. The other question, and maybe this is more for Kim, is are we yet thinking about the impact of all of these changes on our long-term space needs? If we're all teleworking, what does that mean for our long-term space needs?
I don't have a definitive answer, but it's definitely a conversation that we're having. Our facilities interiors group is just kind of exploring all of the different kind of philosophies and practices that are coming out, and then looking at how to kind of start to have those conversations about phase 2 of the new normal once we get settled into kind of where we are right now. What kind of is the long-term strategy of how we use our spaces going forward?
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Commissioner Jayapal. I think all your questions kind of talk about this interesting phase we're in right now, where we were rushing to quickly, get everything in place for the emergency. And now, as we're talking about through this presentation, as we're thinking about, is how we evolve over the long term. I mean, we know some of the procedures that we set up for an emergency stop are going to have to continue, and how we do those. And it's not just about culture change. It's also about we have set up for over years and years and years of these systems, and they've been negotiated with our over 10 union partners that we have. And so changing those is not just about what we would like to do. We also have to work with each of our union partners, which it just takes a lot, and with our employees, which definitely takes time.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson. Commissioner Vega-Peterson, are you there? All right, well, we will go to Commissioner Stick.
Here. Sorry, I'm sorry. I was on double mute.
Double mute? Is that like double secret?
Double mute. Yeah. No, I just, first of all, I just wanted to say that I appreciate the information that Kim and Holly have shared. It's I found it really valuable to know how Multnomah County is responding to the impacts on COVID in our employees and the ability to, provide the services and do the work that Multnomah County does and is so needed in our community. And Commissioner Jayapal asked, some of the questions that I had around how we're responding to an environment where not only are people going to be working from home, but they're going to have to care for children. They're going to have to care for, other members of their family or home. So I appreciate that you're thinking about that. And I just would urge you, as you're looking at, some of the policies that we have around care and essential workers and all these other, policies that you mentioned that, are part of the review that we're having, to really, I think this situation that we're looking at going forward over the next several months is going to require, attention at the federal level, attention at the state level, in terms of both policies and resources to help manage this new situation. But I know that there are going to be gaps there, and so really, holding that, in mind as we're thinking about what Multnomah County can do is going to be really important. And so, I know that we have been always doing that is, where do we need to step in to really be there for our employees, but, just want to urge that too. And I just, I was looking at one of the slides that you had, which was about, I think it was like the mask slide or something like that. And I'm just, are those, that one, I don't know how old it was, but it looked like it may not have matched with like the latest state guidelines on using masks and stuff like that. So I just wanted to make sure that we were, as you had said, like we're stepping up to do that.
So full confession, I was lazy and copied a slide from a town hall from about 2 weeks ago. Our actual grid on the employee resource page is fully up to date.
Okay. All right. I was just checking. I was like,
I was hoping the font was small enough, but you got me.
No, that's great. And I appreciate that too. And I guess that's actually a good illustration though of just how rapidly changing things are and how complex this work is, with the number of employees that we have, with all the different kind of work situations and lines of work that we do, and the fact that the guidelines and everything are changing on a week by week basis. So again, just appreciate the work that you do, and look forward to hearing more as we continue down this path.
Thank you. Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Holly and Kim. I had a question. So on, I think it's slide 6 or 7, where you talk about the guidance for safety, physical distance. And so have those standards, like for restrooms or lobbies, have those actually been determined, or is that what you're working on right now?
So we have draft guidelines that we put together, as I said, based on the CDC and then the Oregon Health Authority standards. We are kind of vetting them through all of the departments to figure out where the gaps are, or where we need to adapt the guidelines where they don't make sense. So I would categorize them as draft right now, but we are using kind of a base set of guidelines.
Okay, and so then you'll be coming back and sharing. I mean, I'm just trying to envision in the Multnomah building, what does that mean? Walking into, does that mean only one person can be in a 3-stall restroom at a time? What does it look like? How many people can be in an elevator? So I just didn't know if you had gotten there yet.
So what we're realizing is that to implement the standards, we really have to look at it building by building. So especially in the multi-tenant buildings where multiple departments are in one building, we are just starting to go kind of room by room and look through, how are the standards applied here? How are they applied here? Because it is just really specific to each space. So that is the work that we're doing now, with hopefully with the ability to come back and make some recommendations to all of the departments.
Okay, great.
I'll just say that since I'm in the McCoy building right at this moment, this building, because there are people in here with the EOC and some of our health department staff, that this building is set out very well. There's lots of signage. In fact, I was commending the facility staff yesterday. I've been to not that many, just a few grocery stores in the past 5 months. And the signage here is so easy to understand. It's so clear. One of the sinks in the bathroom is taped off. The arrows are, you saw some of the signs earlier. it's really easy to understand and very thorough. And it was done very quickly. So congratulations to the facility staff.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that because as we all have been in stores, it's kind of confusing. And I'm like, which way do I go? And oh, you're going the wrong way. So I appreciate that. The other question I had is really about mental health and boundaries. And it encompasses all of, if you're a caretaker, whether that be for a child. I mean, my staff, we're actually working more hours and, we're trying to rethink about what does it look like for productivity post-COVID. And, I was just doing a little bit of research of I'm not sure who came up with the 40-hour work week, 5 days a week, but I did find an article that actually was published by the CDC in 2004. And it talked about the impact of people that work more than 40 hours a week, that they're often less healthy, less productive, less alert after you work 8 hours. And anyway, I mean, I just think, COVID has brought a lot of challenges, but has also given us an opportunity to rethink about the efficacy and the hours. I mean, often I know that all of you, even though we're not on the clock, that, Friday night at 10 o'clock, we're like, oh yeah, I've got to get a memo out or I've got to send an email or, so I'm just concerned and I don't even know, I think Holly, you mentioned that you have young children. Like I'm fortunate to some degree that my children are grown. I just don't even know how you work at home with children and are expected to educate your children. There's more laundry, there's more cooking, there's more cleaning, there's more responsibility at home. And oh, by the way, we're in a pandemic and you have a job to do. And, I know we're all feeling that stress, but I'm just really worried about the work-life balance. And, and we're trying to figure out in my office, we've got to have boundaries. We're considering a 4-day work week. We've been trying it. It really it's kind of like what I've found is that we're just working more hours in the 4 days and not necessarily getting that extra day off, but maybe it's turning into a half day off. So anyway, I don't know what, psychologists say and what best practices are, but I'm really worried about the mental health side of it. So I don't know if you've been doing research or could speak to that.
Yeah, I think you are hitting on such a critical point of, working from home has a lot of benefits. And we also know that the lines are blurred between work and personal life more than ever. A lot of research shows that folks are not knowing when to turn it off. And to your point, we now are carrying multiple hats. We're teachers, we're parents, we're caregivers, we're employees. And that is actually impossible. And so you bring up a critical piece that behavioral health is probably more kind of rising concern on our workforce than ever before. What you're doing is what we need more leaders to do. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all structure. What we can do is share best practices around how to create those lines and those balances and how to do things like 4-week or 4-day work weeks, flexible schedules, no meeting Monday. But it has to be based on each team and the unique work. And so I think that's that challenge of trying to come up with best practices while also really challenging our leaders to do what you're doing and saying, what is my team right now? What am I seeing that they're doing that I'm concerned about that I can help them with? It's a little bit of both.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Holly. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate your hard work. And I know that you're all working really diligently. And I appreciate you doing such great outreach with our employees and listening to what their concerns are, especially you mentioned the ADA work group. That's really important. So thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you for a very thorough presentation this morning. And that is the conclusion of our board meeting for today. We now have time for board comments on non-agenda items. So I'm going to go through the commissioners by district to see if anyone has something to discuss. And we'll start with Commissioner Myron.
Nothing at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Jayapal?
Nothing for me either. Thank you.
Commissioner Vega-Peterson?
Nothing for me.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Stegman?
Thank you, Chair. I do have an announcement. We will be holding our East County Issue Forum. It will be next Thursday, August 6th at 3 p.m. It will be held virtually, and it will be around reopening of our schools. So we'll send out Zoom invites. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes today's regular board meeting, and there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.